Writing. The sound of tearing fabric silenced the entire ballroom. Clara Bennett stood frozen as the billionaire's fiancée, Vivian Hart, held a fistful of her pink maid's uniform in her hand. Beneath the torn fabric, an old surgical scar curved across Clara's back. Vivian stared at it. Her anger disappeared. For several seconds, nobody moved. Before we uncover what that scar meant, tell us where you're watching from, your city or country. And if you love stories filled with secrets, betrayal, second chances, and unexpected justice, subscribe and stay with us. You'll want to hear how this night ended. The evening had begun beautifully. The Hawthorne estate was glowing with chandeliers, flowers, and hundreds of guests dressed in black tie elegance. Adrian Hawthorne, 34, stood at the center of it all, the heir to a billion-dollar hotel empire. Beside him was Vivian, his glamorous fiancée. She was beautiful, wealthy, confident, and accustomed to being obeyed. Clara, 26, had been working at the estate for less than 3 months. She kept to herself. She arrived early, worked quietly, and never complained. But Vivian had noticed one thing about her. Adrian sometimes noticed Clara. Not romantically. Not even intentionally. He simply remembered her name. "Thank you, Clara," he would say when she brought his coffee. "You're welcome, Mr. Hawthorne." That was enough to irritate Vivian. During the engagement gala, Clara carried a silver tray through the crowded ballroom. She had almost reached the dining room when Vivian stepped into her path. "You," Vivian said sharply. "Where were you?" Clara lowered her eyes. "Mrs. Hawthorne asked me to bring the extra champagne glasses. I asked where you were." "I was in the service hall." Vivian glanced at the tray. One glass was missing. "Who took it?" "I'm not sure." Vivian's face hardened. "Of course you're not." Clara felt dozens of eyes turning toward them. "I'm sorry." "You're always sorry." Adrian approached from across the room. "Vivian, what's going on?" "Your maid lost one of the crystal glasses. It was probably an accident." Vivian looked at him. "Of course you'd defend her." "I'm not defending anyone. I'm saying it's a glass." But Vivian had already made up her mind. She stepped closer to Clara. "Take off the uniform." Clara blinked. "Excuse me? I want to know if you hid something in it." "There's nothing there." "Then you have nothing to worry about." Clara shook her head. "Please. I can't take it off here." That answer made Vivian suspicious. "Why not?" Clara quietly whispered, "Please." Vivian grabbed the back of her uniform. "Then I'll find out myself." She pulled. The fabric tore. Clara gasped and stumbled forward. The room went silent. A jagged old scar was visible along the left side of her back. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't accidental. It was the kind of scar that came from a major operation. Vivian's expression changed completely. She knew that scar. Not because she had seen it before. Because she knew the story behind it. Years earlier, when Vivian was 19, her younger brother Ethan had been involved in a serious car accident. He had survived only because a stranger had stayed with him until help arrived and donated blood at the hospital. The family had never learned the stranger's name. But Vivian remembered one detail from the hospital report. The donor had been a teenage girl. A girl who had suffered injuries in the same accident. A girl who had later disappeared from the records. Vivian stared at Clara. "What is your full name?" Clara looked frightened. "Clara Bennett." Vivian's lips parted. Adrian noticed. "Vivian?" She ignored him. "Were you at St. Mary's Hospital 11 years ago?" Clara went pale. "Yes." "Room 214?" Clara slowly nodded. Vivian stepped backward. That was you. Clara looked confused. You don't remember me. I was there, Vivian whispered. My brother was there. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Ethan? Adrian suddenly understood. Ethan was the boy from the accident? Clara nodded. He was trapped in the car. I was riding with my mother. She didn't survive. The ballroom remained silent. Clara continued quietly. I found Ethan before the firefighters arrived. He was scared, so I held his hand. At the hospital, they said he needed blood. I was a match. Vivian stared at the scar. You donated. Yes. But why didn't you tell anyone? Clara gave a small, painful smile. Because your family offered to pay my medical bills, and I refused. I didn't save him because I wanted money. Adrian looked at Vivian. And you tore her uniform because you thought she stole a glass. Vivian lowered her head. The accusation landed harder than any insult. But Clara wasn't finished. There's something else. She reached into the pocket of her damaged uniform and pulled out a small, worn photograph. It showed a little boy sitting in a hospital bed. Beside him stood a teenage girl with bandages on her forehead. On the back were 4 words written in childish handwriting. Thank you for staying. Vivian covered her mouth. That's Ethan. Clara nodded. He gave me that before I left the hospital. Vivian began to cry. For years, she had remembered the mysterious girl as someone her family had never been able to find. She had imagined that girl as some heroic stranger. She had never imagined she would one day stand in front of her, wearing a maid's uniform. Then Adrian walked toward Clara. You saved my friend's life, he said. Clara shook her head. I just did what anyone should have done. No, Adrian replied. Not everyone would. Vivian looked at the torn uniform in her hands. I humiliated you. Clara said nothing. I judged you because of your job. Still, Clara said nothing. Vivian swallowed hard. I'm sorry. Clara finally looked at her. Apology accepted. Vivian seemed surprised. Just like that? Clara gave a tired smile. I know what it feels like to carry something painful for years. I don't want to add another burden to mine. Adrian removed his jacket and gently placed it around Clara's shoulders. Then he turned to the guests. Tonight was supposed to celebrate my engagement. Instead, it reminded me of something more important. He looked at Clara. Money can buy comfort. It can buy buildings, cars, and beautiful rooms. But it can't buy character. Vivian wiped her tears. She walked to Clara and knelt beside her. Not because Clara was more powerful. Not because she was famous. But because, for the first time in her life, Vivian understood that dignity had nothing to do with status. The engagement continued, but quietly. Months later, Clara no longer worked as a maid. Adrian offered her a position managing the Hawthorne Foundation's Emergency Assistance Program. She accepted, but only after making him promise that the foundation would help ordinary families facing medical emergencies without asking for their wealth or social standing. Vivian kept her promise too. She personally helped establish the foundation's first scholarship for children who had lost parents in accidents. And every year, on the anniversary of Ethan's accident, the 3 of them visited the hospital where Clara's life had changed forever. Ethan came too. He had grown into a kind man who remembered only fragments of that terrible night. But when Clara showed him the old photograph, he stared at it for a long time. Then he smiled. I knew I remembered your face. Clara laughed through her tears. You remembered the wrong things. No, Ethan said. I remembered the person who stayed. Years later, Clara kept that photograph framed on her desk. The scar remained. So did the memory. But the scar no longer reminded her only of what she had lost. It reminded her that sometimes the person standing quietly at the edge of a room has already survived a story more powerful than anyone there could imagine. And sometimes, the greatest mistake a person can make is judging someone by the uniform they wear instead of the scars they carry. Which ending style do you prefer next, more emotional or more shocking?